Hello, everybody. I'm Laureen Garrod. I'm the director of the TV division at Ryckman. And this is a session I'm particularly passionate about, so I'm glad you're here with us. I'd like to just say this is the second time we hold this here at MIPTV, and we also launched an event at MIPCube that's about women in global entertainment. And we launched these initiatives because we realized that there was absolutely no venue, no networking for women internationally for TV and media, and that we have all these women here, and it's a shame not to do that. So that's why we're doing this. And we realized doing that first was like, well, so does this make sense today in today's world to do events for women? You know, some people are like, what's this? And then, that's true. And then we realized how much we all need to share experiences in our lives, but also in our work and in the media and the programs we produce. So there's a lot, in fact, to be said. So I won't say it now, but that's why we're doing this. And I also want to say that as a result of this, Françoise Laborde, who's sitting right in front here, who's a member of the CSA, which is the French regulatory institution for audiovisual programs, was sitting on this panel last year. And as, was it? No, well, whatever. And was sitting on this panel, and after, I think, through discussions with the panelists, and discussions about the Stiletto network, came up with the idea of launching an association in France, because there was no association for women in France TV media, and has launched Pour des femmes dans les médias, which I'm very proud to be part of, and so is Simone. And so we're working together on that, and that's a great thing. Anyway, so now, I will now introduce Pamela Ryckman, who is the author, journalist and author of the Stiletto network. So. And here we go. Off to you.
Well, it's a pleasure and an honor to be here, moderating this year's Women in Tech and Media panel. And I was going to introduce these lovely ladies with whom it is an honor to share the stage. And yet we started talking before the panel, and I realized they would do such a better job at doing it themselves. So, because their stories are fascinating, and the color doesn't even come through on paper. So, Simone?
Thank you. My name is Simone. And I'd like to welcome the first participant who is a man, because it's the opposite as all sessions where we normally sit. There too. Well, thank you for
Amen.
Those who share our usual minority position to be here with us tonight. So I really did it as a producer for television since many years, and which I think is a great thing to do, and especially for women, because it combines type of qualities that I think women have together. And so I've always been on the content side, which was normally called programming side. I created sitcoms in France, introduced it, and then there were soaps, game shows, TV movies, and all sorts of different series, documentaries, and TV we love to watch.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sara Jen. I currently work at Viki.com. Prior to Viki, I was doing content licensing at Warner Brothers in Asia Pacific, so specifically licensing content to online media platforms in Southeast Asia as well as within China. And prior to that, I spent some time at YouTube in San Bruno as well as Disney in their Dimji. So back in Burbank. So now at Viki, I'm focused on business development all around the world. That includes content acquisition, cross-promotion partnership, as well as sort of all aspects of Greater China. And I did get a question today about what Greater China means, where exactly is Greater China. So it's mainland China plus Hong Kong and Taiwan, and then Macau as well. So that's sort of how you would define the territory. So Viki, we are a online video platform that faces the world. So we have users from 200 countries around the world that are, sort of hanging out on our site and spending time and socializing around content of interest, and the content today are actually primetime content from all over the world. So 50 countries around the world. We do have licensing agreements with major broadcast networks in Korea, in Taiwan, including like the likes of like Colombia, like Caraco, and then BBC, and so really all over the world. And our platform, what's very unique is, you know, aside from that it's premium content available in 200 countries, is that users are gathering around the content that they like, hanging out with people from all over the world, and then actually translating it into now already over 200 different languages. And so you can imagine being able to watch a telenovela, but in Bahasa. So that's sort of the uniqueness of Viki, so a crowdsourced business model.
And how about you, Mary Beth?
Hi, I'm Mary Beth O'Connor, and this is a very tough act to follow, everyone who's preceded me. I have a small company called Lucky 8, which produces film and television and theater. I also work with a consortium of investors who are focused on social impact and specifically how to inspire creative job creation in underserved areas across the United States, mostly focused in the Northeast. And I met Pamela through one of our stellar members in the crowd, Kim Moses, and was very moved by her journey from investment banking to pursue her dream of journalism. And the Stiletto network has sort of grown and mushroomed as a result. And so thank you so much for...
Well, thank you for that wonderful segue, because I wanted to begin by telling you something that I found, which has been fascinating to me, and again, that Kim Moses here helped me discover. Her story kicks off the book. So the book is called Stiletto Network, and I found in the US an underground movement of women's dinner groups and networking circles. Most groups have no more than 10 women, but in aggregate they number in the tens, if not hundreds of thousands of women nationwide, all helping each other, moving each other forward in their lives, but also in their careers, really for the first time in history en masse. And I'm wondering if you have seen this, both Simone and Sara, if you've seen this happening outside the US, if that's been your experience, if women have helped you, and if so, whom?
It's really interesting. I didn't know that something like this even occurred outside of sort of my immediate environment. In fact, I currently reside in Shanghai, and maybe just a few months ago, I got invited into this group called Shanghai Fierce. And basically, this is how it's named. And basically, it's a group of women. And in fact, it's women from all over the world who reside in Shanghai, mainly expat, but not all expats. And the purpose of this particular group, it's sort of like a Twitter group, if you will, is to help each other. And so we would organize social activities, brunches, but also like if you had a question about housing or if you had a question you're looking for a specific resource, this would be the forum. So little did I know that this is not a unique environment, but yes, and in fact in Shanghai I have been a part of one.
Simone?
There is such a group in France called Femmes Forum, who is celebrating its 20th birthday these days, but not at all specific to the media. It's more like kind of general in the industry, Femmes Forum. And there is, of course, Pour les femmes dans les médias, which is the new setup arranged with Françoise Laborde and Lorine, who hope to, being specific to media, be able to help. In my generation, which means in previous generations, I can't say that
Simone
women very helpful in her helping others, and women executive not more than others, but I think I owe the kickoff of my own career at the time of my Téléimage venture, which was before today Effervescence. At that time, I launched the first sitcom in France, which name was Maggie, which was a duplicate, or a format of American Maude. And the actress, her name was Rosie Vart, in a way brought me success. We succeeded together, and I can say so it's thanks to her that my first company made a success, and I could make a career in television. So it was thanks to a woman who was loved by women viewers too.
Mary Beth, what has been your experience with other women in the workforce in media? Mary Beth also began as an actress as well. So,
that's such a good question, because I didn't understand or realize I had a strong sort of consortium of female women around me until I began a project on the Super Bowl, which was in the United States, excuse me, was in our region this past year, so the NFL is a big event, and all run by men, except for the actual, handful of women just beneath them who were tasked with making sure this epic event that took a week and a few $1 billion probably to get off the ground. I realized that it was really that group who were doing all the work and also very wide open to connecting me with other women. And when I met Kim actually through a male, but it started to occur to me that there were in every sector that I am engaged with, which is kind of broad because of the sort of investment banking group and social sort of impact space that deals with education. So there are men and women, but I realized that there were at least one or two women in every group who made it a point of making sure I was connected to the right person to get me, what I needed or whom I needed to speak with. So I hope that made sense. It's not like I have a dedicated group that meets every month. I've been included in some of those that you mentioned in your book, but it's now I'm sort of more connected to the bigger picture Stiletto networks that sort of pop up in all of the sectors.
What I've seen is women helping each other more generally, and it's starting to happen within certain industries and within certain firms, but less so. Have you felt in your firms or the larger firms that you've met with that this is happening, that women are pulling each other up, that, there have always been sort of male mentors, right? Men who pull other men up and also then secure their own relevance, right? When these older guys age out, the younger men keep them relevant. Do you see that happening among women in big firms or firms big and small?
It's such a good question. If anything, I see that women who have come to the forefront to help are finishers. They don't like being in the middle of something, or they don't like seeing others in the middle of something, and are really determined to see something come to a successful completion. Even if it means this project doesn't work, we have to walk away, they follow up more, and they see to it that I'm getting what I need in order to accomplish a particular task or to get a project, off the runway or finance, etc. So that's my experience.
I feel the age gap has been better handled than the gender gap, because in all companies people understand they need successors, they need to mentor, they need to form new people. And so I think that the blending between generations is successfully, or more successfully or less, but is always on the agenda. Whereas I feel that the balance between male and female, between men and women, is often not at all on the agenda. It happens or it does not, but there is very seldom a real will to promote women and to try, which I did in all my organizations personally, but if it's a smaller group, it's of course easier. But on my side, there was a will, and to have groups where you would have a balance between ages, but also between genres, just because creativity and because being in a not just duplicated and cloning the same ideas, but trying to open to other people's view was important. I don't see it that often.
Why do you think that is? I mean, if women are consuming media more than ever, and women have a greater percentage of, household spending more than ever, why do you think that is?
Honestly, for me, there is no explanation, but the awareness is a relatively recent one. I belong to a generation where, raised with no difference between boys and girls, and so I felt each time things were not going the way I hoped, it was because I hadn't been good enough. I never felt I had a male chauvinist in front of me. And so the explanation that being a woman make it more difficult, and the convincing was more difficult, and especially in France, where relationship between men and women are sweet, and so you don't feel that it's below that sweetness. There is, a ceiling that you can't go through. It took me time to understand, no, it was just not equal.
Yeah. Do you feel like the stereotypes of high-powered women in the workforce, I mean, we've all heard them, you know, the sharp elbows, and do you think that that persists today? Do you think that women are holding themselves and each other back? Or do you think that now that there's a little bit more room to breathe in firms big and small and more women, you know, it's not, you know, one of the things that I found in interviews with countless women is that many of them talked about how lonely it was. And, you know, because I look for systemic problems, right? I don't think that all women are bad or all men are bad or, you know, but when you're in an environment where there's really only one woman, one token who can rise to the top, well, then it's really hard to share information and resources with the girl in the office next to you if she is inevitably one of you is going to be pushed out. Or it's hard to mentor and shine a light on that talented up-and-comer if inevitably she's going to knock you off your perch. Do you think that dynamic persists today, or do you think it's changing as there's more room for more women to succeed?
I think that the focus you put on role model is a very important one. And I know that in the group we do with Françoise, we spoke a lot about mentoring and how we could, when we try, in France there's another word for mentor if it's a man or women. But it's true that it's very important to have at least an image of your aspiration, of how people of the previous generation handle their private life, their family life, and their success in their careers. And this role model was not that present in my time, and I hope my generation offer it to the next one.
Mm-hmm. I think where there's some opportunity that I've seen, so in the new media space, on Viki specifically, we actually have more than 60% of our users being women. So they're watching a lot of TV dramas and TV series on our site. And so I think that in the new media space where users have a direct opportunity to communicate and a direct impact on your results, you know, they could leave tomorrow to any other site without any barriers, really. In fact, in this environment, new media is more or less forced to actually have more of a voice for women. So in our organization, it wasn't forced per se, but by default, in an executive level, decision makers, like more than 50% are actually women. And so we're uniquely different from that perspective because our audience is core audience is actually women, so we are around to service and fulfill their needs in the market.
Yeah. Now, do you see it bearing out in the numbers? I mean, Simone runs her own firm, and you have a disproportionately female firm, and Mary, you're all at the top of your game, right? But do you see, I mean, with the partners with whom you work, with the other larger firms, do you see it bearing out in the numbers? More women succeeding and rising up within these organizations?
So I don't know if this is the right time for
let's bring it on.
So if you could help bring up the slide. So we did a quick look at sort of top media companies, and this was from a research in 2013. And on the top is your top sort of total media company based on revenues. And what's interesting is that 22% of your top executives are actually female. And the reason why this quick research was done was because I had the impression that in new media there would be way more female for the reasons that I just shared with you, because users can speak directly to your results, right? Can impact your results without any gates in between. But surprisingly, when you look at the data of the known new media companies like the Googles and the Facebook, et cetera, the numbers are not panning out. So only 17% versus 22% of the female executives are at the top decision making. And if you were to look at just the ones in blue, so this is the companies that just only come up over the last decade, the number improved slightly to 18%. So really, it's very light. And so what that told me was that the efforts that the traditional, like the long-standing media company have been making towards improving the voice of women amongst the ranks of decision maker have been, have shown some results. And clearly, the new media world, where my impression was there was a lot of women. In fact, it looks like the women are all at the middle management level. And so I think the new media world still has quite a bit of work to do.
Well, that's particularly interesting because, as we all know, women are they're what, 72% of Facebook users. They're driving more traffic on Twitter. I mean, all of social media is largely, is driven by women for the most part.
Yeah, and I think as we, as the audience are moving towards, I mean, they're multi-platform, including TV, but a lot of the activities are happening online. It's something that I think every company have to think very critically about as a part of their media strategy.
Yeah. Well, given that, what do you think, or how do you think the presentation and perception of women on screen in the media is going? How has it changed in the last decade? Do you think it's more positive? Are there more female role models or fewer? Mary Beth?
I think it's so polarized. You have some examples of some very fine, iconic females, from our history that are portrayed very, very well. And then there are, I think, more stereotypes than ever now present, and a drive for all ages, women of all ages, and particularly young girls who I'm concerned about, who are chasing, it's so image conscious and chasing, things that are completely unachievable to, sort of a normal person. And so no, I think we're failing that. I think we're failing to collectively speak on behalf of our gender and celebrate some of our achievements. I think we were probably in better shape 25 years ago. I think, and I look at, it's, the dream, sort of sitcom to create is some version of Mary Tyler Moore, and I don't see that. I don't see that anybody really embraces that. I don't see that out there now, and I'd love to, I don't think it's representative of our collective consciousness. Yeah. Not men or women. I don't think it's sort of the fault of anyone. I think it's sometimes easier to sort of skate where the puck is going, or but I think that pendulums always swing, and so there's always hope. I'm not to be I like to be an optimist, but no, so I don't see that yet.
Simone, in terms of content, what do you see in France or in Europe in general? Do you agree?
I think it has opened, and I know that 15 or so years ago, when there was the first women cop show that was done for TV, the big network it was made for kept it on the shelves and say it's gonna never work because who wants a female cop? And then it was a kind of holiday period. They said, well, it's good time for that crap. And the crap did great, and so it became a new trend. And her name is Julie Lescaut, and of course, probably 100 episodes later, it was a huge success. So I can't say on the content things got much worse, but generally speaking, in the presence of women, I think maybe one of the reasons is that when it becomes to be important, then it's more management, it's more finance, it's more, and it's probably less also creative people. And so I'm sure that among creative community, it's far more balanced than within the management community. And so the problem, unless the new media really come through, is that so far, to get an idea, become a program, and get access to viewers, you need executives of an important studio or of an important TV broadcaster to greenlight it. And you have women before, you have women after, but in the process, the filter is mostly masculine.
So is that your greatest challenge? I mean, how, as women, again, at the top of your game, in charge of producing or cultivating content, do you feel like that's your greatest challenge? Are there other views, of women or other types of content that you would like to push through, but you can't? Or, I guess the question is, how in control of content do you feel? And how would you change it if you were a decision maker?
That's such a great question, because in some ways we're more in control, and the everyday person is more in control of content and can shape their own brand according to their personal whim, right? That's what technology has afforded us. But there still is that sort of zeitgeist of decision makers, and I don't know if it has to do with male, female, or the. I think control is always based on the economics and what is going to sell, and that is just that's in investment banking, that's in sort of any industry. So how I don't think I can be explicit about a singular challenge or what the greatest challenge is. I think it's about at what point can you sort of break through certain barriers and have meaningful influence on collective consciousness.
So do you think if women stopped watching garbage, that garbage would stop being produced? I mean, no, really.
But we couldn't. It's wonderful and it's indulgent and we love it.
Fault, but if I'm sitting home watching Real Housewives or whatever I'm watching every day, and that has a portrayal of women that's not super positive or something, am I then feeding the machine? What is our role as consumers, particularly consumers who can be very vocal on social media, to help shape that content?
Yeah, I mean, for Viki, if you posed a question of, do I have the ability and the right and the authority to decide what content? To some extent, yes, because I'm part amongst the decision makers. But most importantly, it's really the audience. And as I mentioned, our audience majority women. I shared the story earlier. The easiest way actually to get a lot of traffic immediately is actually to put some risque content on your site, because without promotion, it automatically somehow the men of the world find them. And so there was a point in time, it's like a year back now at this point, where we, in need for growth, we were considering to put something that's a little bit more risque. It wasn't even full out, on the other side of the spectrum. And when we did that, we licensed the content, we put it on our site, we didn't even promote it. And immediately we had a backlash from our user base, which is core, more women, who literally said, Viki, that is off-brand, and that is not acceptable, and we're not okay with that. You need to take that off the site. And so because, in the social media space, in the new media space, the audience has such a big voice that we responded to that. So the audience actually decides what content should and should not be online. And as a result of that, we've grown, double every 6 months continuously over time. And that's all in spite of having any sort of risque content. So they have a bigger voice than me.
I think, too, that digital has to make us be optimistic, because digital means that demand will have a stronger control. And also it means that viewers have immense choices, and so they will direct what they wish. And interactivity have them being able to be mobilized and be able to boycott what they don't like, voting with, with the remote control as well as with their own choices. So definitely digital will make the old brave world disappear. And the new brave world will be more equal.
Well, I think that's a great note, actually, to end the official panel, but also to open it up to questions. And I told Sara that I would mention that there is going to be a networking event, cocktails, sort of to continue the fun afterward in MIP Square. But anyone have questions? Yes.
Thank you.
No, take mine, because then you guys have to talk.
Hi, I'm Annika. I'm co-founder of Dramatify. I don't have a question, more of a remark when it comes to the number of female executives at the new companies. And you have to realize that companies like Google, Yahoo, Amazon that do create a lot of studio content today are developer driven. So unless you have a technical developer background, it will be very hard for you to get an executive position there. And I mean, that's the culture, and I think that it's nowhere reflecting of what it should be, but it is what it is. And I can say I come from Stockholm, Sweden. We are a small handful of any number of female executive or founders among the startup community, which is booming right now. And that's a problem because we don't get the talent or the experience among women that we should have, actually.
So the answer to this is get your girls study programming.
Yes?
Hi, I'm Maria from Chicamotion. And I have a question for Sara, I guess, because you're moving in the new media sphere. And I've often heard the argument that, that advertisers are looking for young male audiences, and that's why this is their target audience for social media. But you're saying that, for example, in your platform, you have a majority female base. Do you think is that, it seems a bit incongruous, or is that a trend outside of your platform, or what do you think about that?
In fact, because our platform is full of female 18 to 35, in the advertising campaigns that we've done over the last few years, we've actually seen a premium in CPM, so cost per thousand views, over some of our, the very obvious, if you will, competitors in the same space. And so, they position, or the positioning of our platform is premium TV. So I think people are thinking of these audience in the same way as shoppers who hold the purse strings. And so, in fact, that's worked to our favor.
But it seems like you're the exception rather than the rule, no? Do you think what could be the trend to change that? Because female have economic power as well, but the advertiser argument seems to be that we're looking for the young males.
Yeah, that surprises me only because that's opposite of what our advertisers are telling us. But if I can make a guess, I think that because today, if you look around the websites, most of the websites do have more male. And some of the obvious sort of targets for advertising, like from advertising buy perspective, are like sort of games, and this is one of the major categories. And in fact, for those games that spend a lot of money on advertising, the games are targeting male. And so I think it's about the fit of the particular advertiser's needs. And so for any site that has, similar to us, more female or would like to cultivate more, I think the idea, one idea is to go to advertisers like the CPGs, the consumer package companies, who on a normal day in a TV would be targeting female audience. This would be the advertisers you want to reach out to versus your average sort of ad network type of buys, which you're right, those are mainly targeted towards male.
Unfortunately, we are out of time, but thank you again so much for coming. This was an honor to be here. Thank you, Sara. Thank you to MIPCube. Thank you. Cocktails outside.